Janey Lee Grace. Welcome to the Natural Health and Sobriety Show on UK Health Radio. Hi, and welcome to the Natural Health and Sobriety Show. I'm Janey Lee Grace, and as you will be well aware, I run a community called the Sober Club. And the Sober Club is for people who are, well, often drinking more than they want to, or perhaps they've been sober for a while and they really want to focus on living their best life without the booze. I don't often work with people who are at rock bottom, as it were, who are clinically dependent on alcohol. And I think that's a different remit altogether. You may know I work as a sober coach as well, and I train people to be sober coaches, but it's very much in that area that we call grey area drinkers. And what that really means is we're neither at rock bottom, but we're not fine either, even though often the perception is that it's completely normal to drink huge amounts of alcohol. But grey area drinkers are somewhere on that spectrum. And my belief is that we absolutely do not have to wait until we hit rock bottom before we step off that booze elevator. So it was interesting for me recently to interview Susan Laurie, who did fit that category of having been at rock bottom. In fact, the title of her book is From Rock Bottom to Sober Forever. And I came across Susan's work because she is doing some amazing stuff. She's part of the Alcohol Health Alliance Commission on Alcohol Harm, which is part of the all-party parliamentary group. And really, for me, anyone who is trying to make waves in government around how alcohol is viewed, it really has to be a good thing. Susan is also responsible for a code of ethics called the Sober Code, which is really beneficial for helping people determine how best they can work with, well, people such as me, sober coaches, to ensure that they work with the right people. Because, it's worth just stressing here that if you are clinically dependent, if you do need alcohol to function, then it's dangerous to stop suddenly, and it's a big thing. We really do need this, great support, which sadly in the UK is, it's lacking, to say the least. But of course, there will be support available for you, and your first port of call will always be to contact your GP. But if you're someone who is a grey area drinker, that's different. And the work that I do as a sober coach and as someone who works with various modalities and various therapies can absolutely be beneficial. So I hope that you will, just listen to this interview and perhaps you'll be thinking to yourself, oh, thank goodness, I am not as bad as Susan got. It's not as bad as that for me. But perhaps I'm drinking more than I want to. And you will have heard me say many times, the best question to ask yourself is, could my life be better physically and emotionally without alcohol? And if the answer is, well, yeah, of course it could. I'll wake up feeling fresher. I'll have more energy. I'll have more clarity. Then that's when I'd say you absolutely owe it to yourself to do something different. Check out the Sober Club, get some support, get the help that you need. And Susan talks about things that worked for her. And of course, one of the other things that I work with is family constellations, and can be incredible how that a workshop with family constellations can change just so much for people. So I hope you'll enjoy the interview. Susan, welcome. Thank you so much for being a guest.
Thank you so much, Janey, for inviting me. It's a real pleasure.
Yeah, it was lovely to meet you a few weeks ago. We got to have a chat, which was really nice. So now what's really interesting here for me is that I, of course, all the work I do pretty much is with people who are very much grey area drinkers. They've been drinking more than they want to. They never got to the rock bottom point, for which I certainly, for myself, I'm incredibly grateful. But your story is different. So really interesting to hear another perspective. And I think, from what I've read, your story was quite dramatic. So take us back, if it's not too arduous to have to go there again, as it were.
Take you back to the 1980s and 1990s. Yeah. And it was quite arduous, and alcohol did, almost cost me my life. But I think what I do try to get across is, that I am quite, well, I'm very lucky to be here, but as well as that, that I don't use my story to scare people. It's
Mm,
more that just because I was such an ordinary person, and I, in my head, I didn't fit the profile of somebody with an alcohol problem. I just always thought it would never happen to me,
yeah.
and it's the fact that, with alcohol, it does sort of creep up on you by stealth.
No,
It
absolutely. I
it
mean, I'm
very much.
guessing back you were you. I don't know what kind of age you were when all this was going on, but I'm guessing you had a kind of a career and you were holding your life together.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of people, I started off, at university. I wasn't one of these people that hung around parks in my teenagers years drinking. I started off at university, loving a drink with my mates, and thinking that it made me more fun and stuff. And then I became, a professional. I worked for a long time in the pharmaceutical industry. That there was a lot of drinking involved, conferences with champagne and gala dinners, stuff like that, just really ordinary. And I did, I did love a drink, and I probably drank too much more than was good for me, but I
Mm,
never sort of considered that I had a drink problem. And
mm.
then when it did creep up, as for some people it does.
What
Um,
was there a kind of a reason for you, do you think, that kind of kick-started the increase, as it were? Was there any kind of trauma or tragedy that you can look back at and think, actually, that's when it started to ramp up?
to be honest, Janey, there wasn't. I think it was more, things that I've learned since then, that, you drink a bottle of wine a night, and then suddenly that isn't having the same effect. So then you go up to maybe, a bottle and a bit a night, and over time that just creeps up. Just
Yeah, yeah,
it wasn't that anything dramatic happened in my life. And I think the fact that I could still hold down a job, and that I could, still function. And what I've always said about my drinking, that, you kid yourself that it has some sort of plateau. And even when I was drinking sort of 2 bottles of wine a night, I was thinking, this is, I'm still going to work and stuff. So this is obviously quite normal.
mm,
And I'm still functioning, so I don't have a problem. And yeah, it was that gradual creeping into my life, gradually getting a hold, and to the fact where, people in my family, people who are around you all the time, they sort of don't notice as well. It's just when it starts to become a problem
yeah.
that,
I mean, did when you did start to kind of think, oh, maybe there's something not right, did you seek out help? Did you kind of think of the going the traditional route? I mean,
yeah.
back then, of course, there wouldn't have been anything like the huge wealth of stuff available now. So I guess your first thought was AA back then.
Well, even before that, my first thought was, going to the GP, and maybe
Mm,
thinking
mm,
that I was a bit anxious. I
mm.
didn't realize that, a hangover has an element of anxiety
Yeah,
attached to it. So I thought maybe I was a bit down. Going to my GP, I had lots of counselling. But yeah, definitely the when I thought, this is causing more problems in my life with my relationships and stuff, I did go down the traditional routes. And this is a long time ago, going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and exactly what you've just said. That was like the go-to then.
mm, mm.
Um, but like I said, it it kept on moving. It progressed. It has a way of convincing you. If you've been, for me, if I'd been going to Alcoholics Anonymous for a while, that I wasn't as bad as some people that I saw there,
Right,
so I
right.
didn't have a problem. And just having, right, I've scared myself now. I've got it under control. I can go back to having to drinking with my friends and stuff socially, and that happened, over and over again.
Yeah.
Um, until, ultimately it really started to be causing big problems in my life, big problems in relationships, in being able to, function and run my business at that time. But yeah, and then when that starts to happen, you've almost crossed a line where that I think once you've crossed over into dependence, people don't realize it sort of digs its claws in when you start trying to, be more serious about getting help.
So for you, was there an actual sort of physical impact? Did you have physical health issues? Was it what was going on?
I think the physical impact was more the withdrawal, and the really severe hangovers. The older you get, the worse they get. But it was definitely the withdrawal that impacted on me. It definitely was impacting as well on my mental health too. So and also, things like I've still got scars from falling over, head injuries. I've got, cuts and things. So in terms of, hurting myself.
That's a really interesting thing to raise, actually, because I think people forget the extent to which, our accident and emergency units are full every weekend of people with injuries, linked to alcohol.
Yeah,
they're so bloody dangerous.
It is. So all along this journey, I'd be trying to get help here and there. I'd be, dabbling in Alcoholics Anonymous. Also, what a lot of people don't realize, especially, for anyone who's got children, is if you've been to GP once or you've been to GP a couple of times, there's this reluctance to keep going back.
Of course, because you don't want to be reported.
Oh, God, so I would, spend money on different stuff that I found as well. But then, all the while this dependence on alcohol is creeping up. I've always pictured it, for anyone who's seen the film Ghost, the dark shadows, and it sort of, the more that I realized I had a problem and tried to get help, it sort of, the more it tried to wrap itself around me. And it became really quite scary, to the point where I was, at first I'd been volunteering to have help, and then, maybe falling off the wagon to where, you dragged kicking and screaming into rehab. And
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
So did you do a kind of a residential kind of rehab?
I did a couple of those, both totally different as well. One very traditional, around the 12 steps, and I was in there for it was over 3 months. And you sent out with, you've got a toolkit, do this, that, and the other, keep working it, and all of these tools, which were really helpful. And then the other rehab I was in was much more alternative and very much more spiritual. But yeah, I relapsed. I managed to stay sober for quite a while, and the same with Alcoholics Anonymous. I had long periods of sobriety, but then in the end, I became very, very ill, and that was the scariest time, because people around you, for self-preservation, you fall in love with somebody, but you can't be in love with somebody who's actively,
who isn't themselves. I mean, this is the thing, isn't it? When you're drinking, you actually are not yourself.
You're not yourself anymore.
It really, I think that we really underestimate just how toxic and evil alcohol really is. I just don't think we talk enough about it, really.
About how much it impacts on somebody.
And you know, depending on how woo woo you want to get, you know, the origins of the word alcohol, you know, alcohol, which they say, you know, I'm sure you've heard people talk about that, but you know, you're really getting into a different territory here where you really are looking at something other than you know, you can't be authentic, you can't be who you're meant to be with alcohol. It absolutely lowers your vibration. And you know, I mean, what clever marketing to try to trick us into thinking that it's going to make us our best selves, you know, when literally the opposite is true.
And the tragic thing for me, because even though I've been sober for a long time, I look back, and for years before I realized I had a problem, alcohol did have a negative impact on me. And my son, I can remember, he was only little, you know, like really small, and I must have poured myself a glass of wine long before I thought I had a problem. And he said, "Mummy, I like it when you drink tea better." Yeah. And he picked up on the subtle change in my personality.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it, for children?
They don't understand.
I know.
Them. So,
but they know that you're different.
They know that you're different. And getting back to what we were saying, you're not yourself, and the people around you, they're not with the person that they met and fell in love with, or they loved. So in the end, I was on my own. I could drink 24/7 then. So when I came around from being unconscious, you know, I would just start drinking again. So if it was 3 a.m. and I was awake, I'd drink it. It was my normality.
So who was kind of looking after you at this point then? Did you have anyone kind of looking out for you?
Then I was on my own. I can remember, like, my sister, because a lot of people, because you isolate yourself.
Yeah, of course.
And you, there were a lot of people thought that I was, you know, getting on with going to AA and stuff, but I just didn't used to see them.
Right.
And because, you know, I've caused so much chaos and hurt and stuff over the years, people were self-preservation, getting on with their own lives. But I couldn't, the other thing that I didn't realize before this happened was, by that stage, I just couldn't sober up, first of all, because I couldn't face all the damage I'd caused, but also that the withdrawals were so
exactly. Yeah.
That
well, it's not safe, is it, to do that on your own anyway?
Safe, no. So it took a lot of years, and, you know, in those days, there weren't people like you talking about it. There weren't so many people out there that I could have turned to help, you know, like sober coaching and stuff like that. And it just got a hold of me over years. And like I said, I always thought, I don't fit that profile.
No, exactly.
So it did almost take everything from me. And I know that every day, I know that I'm just so lucky to be here, because in rehab and, you know, speaking to people, that the statistics are so awful for somebody who gets that bad.
Yes.
So that's
when you're that deep in the sinking sand, it's really tough, isn't it? So what changed for you then? What led to your last day one? How did you finally crack it?
Well, it's really interesting, because I'd done, you know, the Google search so many times before, you know, for help, and had bad experiences and different things. So for some reason this day, I can remember I was climbing the walls with the horrendous impending doom anxiety. And before I, you know, went down the route again of just drinking myself into a, coma, I looked for help online. I don't know what it was that day. It was meant to be, you know, like you said before, not wanting to be all woo woo, but, you know, somebody was looking out for me, because I found the most incredible, very, very, you know, unique treatment. And since I spent a day having this treatment, that's 8.5 years ago, I've never had a drink since. And I spend a lot of time talking to people about this never giving up hope. Because even I think there's a lot of people out there think, oh, if rehab doesn't work, if Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't work, then that's it, you've got no hope. But there are so many ways.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously we're going to have to ask you what the treatment was, because everyone's going to want to know.
Yeah. Well, I met a guy called Tim Fazakali, who has invented the most incredible treatment. It's for addiction. It's also for things like PTSD and all sorts of anything where you've got negative emotions impacting on your life. But I found Tim Fazakali, who created this technique that completely rewired my brain. And what he did, I was with him for a whole day. He dug out every single reason that brought me down that route to where I was using something to either blot things out or cope with things or be a different person, be a more confident person. He treated all of that one by one. And then at the end of the day, he worked on alcohol with me. And his Tim Fazakali's technique is now called Orpheus Mind Technologies. And I'm working, hard to get it into the NHS, to get a trial with the NHS.
Wouldn't that be great? I mean, I'm guessing, obviously I don't know anything about that technique. I'll look into it. But, a lot of the work that I do with the matrix re-imprinting stuff I do in the family constellations, we do, I'm sure there are some similarities in the uncovering of the root causes and the limiting beliefs and all of this stuff. And one thing, I know this sounds hugely simplistic, but one thing that I've found always underpins this is a lack of self-love. It always just sits right there at the root of it all. And it's absolutely key. And what I find fascinating is that you were in rehab and getting this support, as it were, conventional support. And I wonder whether that's the piece that is so often missing from those kind of treatments. I don't know. I've never had the experience, but I've spoken to a few people who have been through rehab a few times. They relapse, they go back, then they stay sober for a little while, and then they go back again. But nobody's ever challenged them on just becoming, my little phrase is become self-love curious, because it's not as simple as going, oh, all right, then I'll love myself. Oh, hey, aren't I lovely? No, I don't think so. But you can become self-love curious, and nobody's ever challenged them to do that.
Yeah, and feeling good enough and all the rest of it. You're right. You're so right. And I mean, I was only in a couple of rehabs, so I'm sure, that they're all different.
Yeah.
But I think part of it is, often there's quite a few people in there. It's the time to really get that deep with each person. But you're so right. And this thing that I did with Tim, even things that I hadn't been aware with from myself. But if I can just quickly explain that one of the things about me, maybe one of the reasons I started drinking years and years ago, I found it gave me a bit of confidence with, colleagues and with doctors when I was in the pharmaceutical industry and at university, was, I had my background, very working class. And one of the things that Tim uncovered was the impact that the particular school I went to, the free dinner queue, had on me. And you'd be in the queue to go for lunch with your friends, and then anyone who had free
would be separated. Exactly.
And for years I felt
talk about feeling exactly not included, not good enough. I mean, God,
embarrassed. And so
and it's this expression that listeners to this podcast will know. I end up quoting it most weeks, but it's that expression. It's not what happened to you, it's what you made it mean, right?
Yeah.
Because there might have been other people in that queue who didn't make it mean that, but for you, that impacted on you greatly as a child.
Massively.
And then you'd have gone through life recreating, your unconscious mind would have done, recreating other situations where you felt less than and not good enough. And one thing builds on another, doesn't it?
One thing builds on another. So he unpicked all of that. But then, like I said, at the very end of the day, we addressed alcohol and my whole relationship with it. And I'm so lucky that what he's done, and touch wood, it never unravels, is that, I don't even notice alcohol. I don't have to protect myself. I can spend time with people who,
exactly.
So it was miraculous, and that's why 8.5 years later I do the things that I do. And hats off to people like you and all the other people in the sobriety community who are putting a spotlight on it much earlier on. It doesn't
exactly. We do not have to wait till we get to rock bottom.
Exactly.
We really don't. Well, it's a tale, isn't it, Susan? But how amazing that you're free from it, and you look amazing, and you're here to tell the tale. But not only that, you're doing some amazing work right now. So just tell us a bit about the work that you're doing. Well, and we should mention your book, of course. Your book is From Rock Bottom to Sober Forever. Well, tell me a bit about that first. Tell me a bit about the book first, and then we'll go on to your other work.
So, as anyone who's been in that situation knows, it took a few years. My main focus was on repairing relationships. And once the dust had settled and I realized how lucky I'd been, I thought, how can I? It was more about giving people this, don't give up, because I know that I felt hopeless after my umpteen time through Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff. So I wrote the book, and then on the back of that, I was invited before the pandemic to give evidence at the House of Lords Commission on Alcohol Harm. And then it sort of, things have built on that I found that I've been able to, been given a voice to help people like me, because it is, prevention is where, really important, but there are people who find themselves, a bit stuck. And so that's what I do. I do work with Alcohol Change UK. And
just remind us what you work with the Alcohol Health Alliance. Just remind me what that body is. Is that linked to? Is that a parliamentary kind of body? What do they do?
The Alcohol Health Alliance. It's an alliance of there are dozens of organizations involved with alcohol. So, for example, say the Forward Trust and Alcohol Action on Addiction will be one of those organizations, and Alcohol Change UK. So the Alcohol Health Alliance is a huge umbrella, and they get involved with things like, the Commission on Alcohol Harm. They got that to the House of Lords, people giving evidence, creating a report. I'm also part of the all-party parliamentary group on alcohol harm. So they, it's MPs, Alcohol Health Alliance, charities, all trying to reduce the harms that alcohol.
UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good. UK Health Radio, the station that makes you feel good.
And do you think the message is, I'm sure it's foremost in your mind, but do you think the message is getting through that that everything we've been talking about, that you do not have to wait till you're at rock bottom? You can absolutely make, if you're drinking, a couple of nights a week or something, but it's making you unhappy, you can make the choice to be free from alcohol. And what a cool choice that would be. Do you think any of that message is starting to drip through? Or is it still that thing of, what we do in this country is we all drink. We drink at weddings, we drink at funerals, drink at play dates. That's what we all do. Oh, and a few people just can't hold their beer. Terrible shame. Those people fall over and damage the health service. I know I'm being flippant and a
No.
bit rude here, but that's actually the reality of it, isn't it? You rock up to a GP and you say, actually, I'm worried about my drinking. They don't say, fantastic, you've noticed, wonderful, let me signpost you to some amazing content, you can be free. They just go, well, you look fine, but try and have an alcohol-free day every now and then. Never do they say, brilliant, you've noticed.
No, you spot on there. But getting back to what you were asking, I think because of people like you, I think that there is this sort of gradual shift. I think that there are far more now, because people are talking about it, there are far more, for example, alcohol-free alternatives.
Yeah, exactly. And exactly. And that's making a huge impact. Actually, it really is, isn't it? Because anything to do with alcohol is also going to be linked to the economy, and so thankfully they can still make some money. And also millennials, a lot of young people they're brighter than we were, right? They want to look after their mental health and not waste their money.
There's definitely a shift there, but it's still tough. I mean, this new phrase, that's come about in the past few years, sober shaming, that still
absolutely
goes on.
Yeah, no, it certainly does.
Difficult.
Well, in the workplace, I mean, as you know, a few of the coaches that I have trained are making fantastic waves in their own workplace settings, and in fact, some of them work for the NHS. So we've done a few things for the NHS, which has been great. Very, very early days, and there are other coaches that I've trained who are within their own workplace settings are offering to deliver webinars and all of that. And I mean, you would think that would already be going on, but it really has not been until very recently, because most kind of big corporate businesses, and even the little ones, they do offer stuff for their staff, Pilates sessions, and do you want to stop smoking, and how to manage your time, and stress management, and what do you eat, and let's have something on nutrition. You say to them, can we do something on not drinking? Well, that doesn't quite fit, because we're all going out for drinks on Friday night. What do you mean you're not joining us? There's a huge, I'm flipping subjects here, but while we're talking about workplace issues, I mean, what about the government? I mean, for God's sake, the words government and drinking is, you can't have a sentence without the two words being together.
They go hand in hand. So there's definitely a real challenge there when you're talking about the people who make the decisions, and it's such a big part of their lives. But what I'd love to see, people talk about that don't mind talking about mental health, and companies are all into well-being and stuff. So hopefully, so there will be a time when people can open up about their drinking and not be worried about being disciplined or whatever that is.
Exactly, because you're absolutely right. I had a client who was so nervous of asking for any help that she might need, because she was terrified of losing her job. I mean, if you're holding your job together, when you think back to when you were at rock bottom, and at the beginning you were holding you were working. If your job had gone, that's going to knock you to rock bottom even quicker, isn't it? It's going to be so unhelpful. That
I do see things, changing really gradually, and just the fact that, people like you were talking about it with your podcast and all the work you do, it is making a difference. And, I never want to use my story to, to scare people, because again, it just puts people off, like, oh, she's on a soapbox and stuff. But, just let's talk about it. Let's be more mindful. Let's think about it so that people don't end up,
exactly. And what I do love about what you're doing is you absolutely are helping to build that bridge between what I've seen as, well, certainly up until fairly recently, as very much kind of two separate worlds. You've got your kind of AA world, your AA, your alcohol services, your rehab, and you've got your kind of, the stuff I do, the drinking more than you want to, the sober curious, the well-being side. And it's almost like never the twain shall meet. And actually, that's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous, because I don't care how anyone gets sober. I really don't. It doesn't matter to me at all. Just do it, right? And I know there are some fundamental disagreements. There are, there's some fundamental differences. I absolutely believe that you can be free from the alcohol trap. And, lots of people who are in the kind of rehab AA world would say, no, you can't. It's one day at a time. And if God delivers you for another day, but you'll still be an alcoholic after 35 years. So we'll never meet on that point, end of. But we've got to build a bridge, haven't we?
I have the same problem. People, as far as I'm concerned, I had a problem. I don't now.
Exactly. Exactly. And you're a wonderful advocate for that, because in the past, if someone spoke the way you have done about literally being grateful to be alive, having been absolutely at rock bottom, the assumption would be from absolutely everybody, before they bother to listen to your next sentence, the assumption would be, oh, well, she's an alcoholic then. Thank God I'm not that bad, right? Next. Yeah. Literally. So the fact that you're sharing this and you're building that bridge, this is what people need to hear. Any of us can end up how you did. Of course we can. Because it's not about who we are or what we were born with. It's about alcohol, right? Which is toxic and addictive.
It's about alcohol. It's toxic, addictive. But that's what I've always said. I didn't choose it. I was addicted to it, but I'm not anymore.
Exactly.
And I have a new life, and I'm not doing it one day at a time. You're free.
You're free.
Yeah, I'm free of it.
Love that. I love it. Well, fantastic, Susan. You're doing amazing work. I absolutely love it. It's really a really powerful story, and keep on doing what you're doing. I'm really impressed that you're in there. And I think, I'd love to kind of get in and have a little conversation, but I don't know if they'd have me, because I'd probably be a bit loud. I don't know if I'd get on very well in Parliament. So well done you.
Well done you too, honestly. Feelings mutual. Thank you.
Well done. And we'll put the links in the show notes for you. And carry on doing everything you're doing. And let's speak. I mean, again, so let me ask you this question. So in a year's time, what would you like to have seen happen? Just, give me one thing, two things that you would, concrete things you'd like to have seen change. And then we'll put it in the diary and we'll speak in a year.
Yeah, well, I'd love there to be a trial of my treatment in the NHS.
Yeah,
I think that would be massive. And I also I would love to see you standing up in Parliament.
Oh, okay. There's a challenge.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll speak in a year and we'll see if that comes up.
Yeah.
I might even brush my hair. Brilliant. Thanks ever so much, Susan. It's really great to chat to you. I appreciate it.
And you take care. Thank you.
So check out Susan's work. The book is From Rock Bottom to Sober Forever. Make sure you check us out in the Sober Club if that's of interest for you, thesoberclub.com. My podcast is Alcohol Free Life. And of course, you are very welcome to message me, get in touch if there's something you're concerned about. Very easy to find across social media. It's just at Janey Lee Grace. See you next time. You've been listening to the Natural Health and Sobriety Show on UK Health Radio.